1 to 5 every week based off 3 things: character development, story, plot, and new gadgets, new powers, new heroes, new villains. Now, let's get to our shows this week, and they'll be Dragonball Super, Arrow, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Ash vs. the Dead, Luke Cage, Supergirl, Supernatural, Legends of Tomorrow, and now, just like every Titans of TV, 5 will make the cut, and the rest will not make the cut. Now, this is a very special Titans of TV. This week, The Flash is off due to elections, and the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was off due to elections, but because of the fact that I'm a week behind, I still had an episode for this week, and that's going to play a big, important part in Titans this week. Also, before we get started today, I wanted to give a shout out to one of my fans, one of my biggest fans out there on Facebook, Rebecca Ivy. All of you out there, please send your thoughts, your prayers, and your positive vibes to her dad. He's in the hospital right now, and he's in critical condition. So if you guys could just send your thoughts, your prayers, your positive vibes, so that he has a speedy recovery, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you. Now, let's get to our first show that didn't make the cut this week, and that was Supergirl. This week's episode of Supergirl, I gave a 7. This week's episode was probably one of the lowest, probably one of the worst of the season. Supergirl has been one of those shows that, you remember, in the last few weeks, I've said has improved so much from last season to this season. It has done so amazing. But this week, and part of last week, I feel like we're starting to taper off. I feel like that momentum that we had in those first few weeks, Supergirl, is starting to wear off. And my thing is, it's because Superman went away. I really do. I think he was the real missing piece to the puzzle, and I feel like Supergirl quite hasn't been the same since. So now this week, Kara is dealing with the fact that she's got Mon-El under her wing, and she's trying to train him and kind of mold this life around him the same way hers is, and the same way that Clark's is. But he's a different type of person than she is. So what she does isn't necessarily going to work for him. So there's some conflict there. Also, on the other end of things, Jimmy wants to become a superhero. He wants to go out and fight crime like all those other, like Superman, like Supergirl, like all these other people. And what he doesn't realize is how dangerous this is. So Winn tries to talk him out of this, and by the end of the episode, he's like, listen, Winn, regardless, I'm going to do this. So I don't care what you say, because I'm still going to do it anyway. So he's like, all right, fine. I'll go ahead and I'll help you make this suit. I'll help you get a suit so that you can go out there and fight crime too. Also during this episode, Cadmus has this new gang of villains, or a new gang of criminals that are out there with these high-tech alien guns, which that was one of the reasons why I give it a 7 this week. I feel like that was not what we really needed. I felt like we should have had a bigger villain, we should have had a better villain, and it's just some thugs hired by Cadmus with these alien guns. I was really disappointed this week, and I'm really hoping that moving forward, getting closer and closer to this crossover with Flash, Arrow, Legends, and Supergirl, that things start to pick up, because I was really dissatisfied this week. Now, let's get to our next show that didn't make the cut this week, and that was Supernatural. We got Supernatural. I gave Supernatural a 8.5 this week. I really think Supernatural stepped up its game from last week to this week. This week, if you remember in last year's Supernatural, they introduced the Thule, a German, like a rogue German faction that delves into the supernatural. Kind of like the polar opposite of the Men of Letters, okay? So Superman has Lex Luthor and Batman has Joker. Like, the Men of Letters version of that would be like the Thule. So last year, they fought the Thule, and we thought they were all gone. Well, come to find out they're not. So we've got this rogue group of Thuls that in this episode are trying to find the descendant of Hitler. Yes, I know, I said Hitler, okay? And their whole plan is to take her body and through this ritual put Hitler into her body. We'll come to find out later in the episode the head of this rogue Thul is just merely using her and transmuting or transplanting her blood into him so that they can put the reincarnated Hitler into him. So the boys are hot on the trail and they're trying to get to the bottom of this, and in the end, these Thul people, this Thul society ends up going through with this ritual, and Hitler is reincarnated in this guy. Then Sam and Dean show up and shots are fired and craziness starts happening, and they end up shooting and killing the new reincarnated Hitler. So we're not getting a whole lot of character development this week, but the story was interesting, and then especially at the end, like the funniest moment of the week goes to Supernatural, because after Dean kills Hitler, he has like this big smile on his face throughout, and he's like, hey, remember when I killed Hitler? He's like, hey, I killed Hitler. You know, so it was really hilarious, really amazing, good episode, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next week. Our next show to not make the cut was Ash vs. the Evil Dead. This episode of Ash vs. the Evil Dead was really good. I was really amazed, and I was really excited about this week's episode. I gave it an 8.5. This week's episode, Ball, the big bad of Season 2, is hot on the trail of Ash and the gang. So they've gone back to Ash's house. And while they're there, the deadite of his ex-girlfriend from the movies, she has come back. And the great thing is they actually got the actress that played her to be in this episode. So that was really exciting. So while they're up at this house, Ball has gotten the entire community, like the entire community of Elk Grove, and has completely surrounded Ash's house. And they've got assault rifles, they got shotguns, and they're shooting at the house. And so while that's going on, like Ash and Chet are in the house fighting off his deadite ex-girlfriend. What is that? So moving forward, as the outsiders are trying to enter the building, Ruby has taken Pablo in Ash's room, and she does this ritual, because what she's trying to do is, Pablo has this connection to the book, to the Necronomicon. So she's thinking by speeding up the process that they can find a way to finally lock up Ball forever by using Pablo as a key or with his connection to the book in order to lock him up forever. And then at the end of the episode, like Ash is fighting with his ex-girlfriend, and he knocks her out on the front lawn, and everybody's ready to open fire and shoot Ash, but then he shows them that all these deadites, all the things that he's been talking about over the years, is real. Like, he's not bullshitting, and now they're finally starting to take notice and notice what kind of a person he is. So, now, let's get to our next show that didn't make the cut this week, and that was Legends Tomorrow. This week's episode of Legends of Tomorrow, I gave a 9. I thought Legends of Tomorrow kind of slowed down a little bit last week, but then this week, they've really stepped it up again, and this week, the team goes to the 80s. So Damien Dark is trying to create issues, create problems between President Gorbachev and the President of the United States. There's this big treaty that's going on that is to be signed and disarm and create more of a balanced system, more of a balanced treaty when it comes to nuclear arms. Well, there are a few things that we're dealing with in this episode. First of all, Ray Palmer, the Atom, since his suit has been blown up, he really doesn't know where he's going, doesn't know what he's doing, so Heatwave has extended a hand out to him, like, here's Captain Cold's gun, you can be my new partner. But see, what Ray learns in this episode is this isn't for him, okay? He's not this cold, calculating Captain Cold character, and even at one point in the episode, he's like, wearing Captain Cold's old coat, and he's, he's trying to be, he even calls himself Colonel Cold. Like, it's hilarious. But at the end of the episode, he realizes that in order to disarm this bomb that's inside the White House, that he has to be more sciencey. And that's when Heatwave's like, listen, you're sciencey. That's how you solve things. You're not like Captain Cold. And that's when we see a lot of growth in Ray's character, seeing him realize who he is. And moving forward, I'm thinking in the next episode or in the following episode, we're going to get Ray's new suit. Also, what we're dealing with in this episode is Sarah Lance. Now that she's the leader of the Legends of Tomorrow, she's dealing with balancing that with her anger and her vengeance towards Damien Dark because of him killing her sister. And also, we are dealing with an issue with Martin Stein. His younger self is in the White House. He's doing big things with the president and whatnot. And at one point, he gets killed. Doesn't get killed, but he gets stabbed by Damien Dark. And so they have to bring him on board, put him in the rejuvenation chamber. And so Martin Stein has to have a talk with his younger self to get him to realize the important things in life, like his wife that he hasn't been paying any attention to. And he's been so wrapped up in achievements and science and growth and everything that he's missing the finer points. So the team goes in there, they're trying to figure this thing out. In the meantime, the Reverse Flash has shown up, and now he's starting to work with Damien Dark. Well, after they've foiled their plan, and Sarah Lance has literally got him in front of him. Also in this episode, before I finish that, we got Obsidian. Okay, on the other end of things, Citizen Steel and Vixen went to go figure out what's going on with the JSA in the 80s. We're going to find out the JSA has been completely destroyed. Okay, and we've got Obsidian, who's one of the last members, and so he ends up helping the team, helping Citizen Steel, helping Vixen to stop Damien Dark in the end. We also find out that Vixen and Our Man ended up having this kind of love relationship back in the day. So overall, the episode was real solid. I give it a 9, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens next week. Now, let's get to Titan number 5. Number 5 this week goes to Luke Cage. Luke Cage did an amazing job this week. I give it a 9. After the last few weeks of Luke Cage continually shutting Cottonmouth's shit down, because shutting down Fort Knox, shutting down all his plants, shutting down all his bases of operation, he's starting to scramble. He's starting to panic. And so in the beginning of this episode, he meets with Detective Scarf, his inside agent, his inside detective inside the department, and he wants more money for all these guns. Well, Cottonmouth don't like that, so Scarf goes to pull his gun, and then there's this tussle, and then he ends up shooting Scarf. So now Cottonmouth is even more worried, and then during this time, Luke Cage is out running the streets, and like the people on the radio, people all over the city are talking about him, the good, the bad, the ugly, and whatever. Okay, then he shows up to Cottonmouth's cousin, Mariah, and then pretty much gives her a warning like, hey, I'm going to shut Cottonmouth down, I'm going to shut you down. And she's like, well, blah, 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 blah. And so he just walks away and does what he's going to do. So after Detective Scarf gets shot, he ends up coming to the barbershop. Okay, in that length of time, Luke Cage ends up meeting with Claire, in which she's proposing this whole superhero idea, him pursuing it, and especially Mr. Fish was talking to him about it before she shows up. Like, hey, you should do this for a living. Like, you should, charge people to be a hero. You should go out there and do good deeds and shit. And he's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do after this whole Cottonmouth thing. So, once Claire and Luke Cage get back to the barbershop, they find Detective Scarf there. So they proceed on taking out the bullets out of him and trying to get him to the police station because he has vital evidence that could lock up Cottonmouth. So Cottonmouth's men are chasing, so they jump in this van and they're chasing around the city, and they get close to the police precinct, in which Scarf's partner then later joins up with them. And So Claire is pulling Detective Scarf, out of this door, and she's in this little alleyway, and like the guys that are chasing him just are coming full force right at him, and Luke Cage comes out of nowhere, dude, out of nowhere, and just completely destroys the truck. It was one of the coolest things I've seen all season. It was awesome. And after that, he helps get them a little further, and that's when Detective Scarf's partner shows up and then gives her all the evidence right before he dies. So he literally dies right there. Now after that, then they go and proceed to lock up Cottonmouth. Now, so the character development and the story arc has come to an end. And especially now, this is the end of what I would call arc number 1. Now what's coming next, and what my predictions are, is we're going to see a lot more of Mama Mabel, we're going to see a lot more Mariah, and I'm thinking that Diamondback is going to be coming to the show next, because in the last few episodes, Shades has talked about that if you can't get your shit right, he's going to take over. So, now let's get to Titan number 4. For this week goes to Arrow. Arrow this week, especially the top 4, I gave a 9.5 to. Okay, Arrow, this season of Arrow has been one of the best seasons since seasons 1 and 2. I've been so happy with it. Now let's get going. Now, this week's episode of Arrow, we've got a trap set up by Prometheus for Green Arrow, in which he is going around and killing these people in Starling City. And what they're finding out is that Prometheus is killing these victims according to the book. If you remember in season 1, when Oliver first started his campaign, first started his adventure, whatever you want to call it, he had this book, a list of names that his dad gave him when he was on the island. Well, come to find out, Prometheus is killing these people that are associated with the people on his list. So Oliver's has no idea who this is. So he keeps the team out the loop until he can ice this down. But it gets to a point where Prometheus is killing so many people, he's got to let them in on it. And once the team finds out about this list and how he got started and everything like that, it puts kind of a void between Oliver and his team, because they look at him as this serial killer, in which he kind of was in season 1. He was more of a vigilante. But while Oliver is dealing with that, he's also dealing with problems as the mayor. Especially mainly dealing with this reporter chick that takes pretty much everything he says and breaks it out of context. Now, in the flashback, we got Dolph Lundgren this week. Dolph Lundgren plays Konstantin Kovar, the man that in the flashback that Oliver has been working up to try to stop. So while all that's going on in the show, Prometheus keeps killing these people. And at the end of the episode, especially in the last few weeks, Quentin Lance, we think he's been drinking, we think that he's been falling off the wagon again, and come to find out, he wakes up out of this drunken stupor apparently with a cut on his arm, and we're thinking that, and the way they're alluding to this is that Quentin Lance is Prometheus. And at one point in the episode, the team tries to set a trap for Prometheus, and by the time they show up, he gets ghost. So, overall, splendid episode, fantastic episode. Green Arrow just keeps hitting it out of the park week after week. Now, let's get to Titan number 3. 3 this week goes to The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead this week, like I said about Titans 1, 2, 3, and 4. I all gave them 9.5s. They all did really amazing this week. And especially The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead this week, we got Daryl is locked up in the Savior's prison. And throughout this whole episode, it was one of the best episodes of the season. The Walking Dead week after week after week keeps hitting it out of the park. Okay? So, we start this episode with Dwight building this sandwich. And this sandwich, in my opinion, and the way he goes about doing it, was very metaphoric for the rest of the episode. Because in the episode, while Daryl's in the beginning of this episode, he's naked in this cell. Dwight brings him these dog food sandwiches, which, in my opinion, is completely inhumane, but that's just me. Anyways, so after, and they're playing this Easy Street song. Now, all you Walking Dead fans out there know exactly what I'm talking about. This song that they played over and over and over and over again to the point where it drove you crazy. If I hear that song one more time, I'm gonna lose it. Seriously. So first, after all this time of being locked up, they finally give him some clothes. And it's like, Dwight this whole time is trying to break him down, trying to get through to Daryl and get him to break down, but Daryl's not that type. So Negan and them bring him up. And Negan talks to him and he offers him that, hey, if you just go along with what we're doing, you can be one of the saviors and you can be living like a king. And then especially, he sits him down and he's like, listen, okay? What is your name? And Daryl's like, looking at him, and like, Negan's to a point where he's about to hit him. And then he's like, Daryl. Because earlier in the episode, when Negan takes him out the first time, earlier in the episode, Daryl breaks out. Like, one of these big guys had went to give him the dog food sandwich, and Daryl jimmied the door. He gets out, and he's trying to make a run for it, and then the saviors surround him. And that's when Negan shows up with the bat. And especially, this was some of the best moments of the season right here. And so Negan's like, hey, what's your name? Negan. The entire circle is like, Negan. And he's like, I'm everywhere. And so, from there, Negan tries to stab at Daryl's feet with the bat. And Daryl keeps walking away. And so, he gives him 3 options. You can be a dead man and work for me. You can work for points, like everybody else. Or you can get yourself a nice pair of shoes and live like a king. And of course, we all know what Daryl did. We all know what Daryl's going to do. After all this fuckery, and after all of Negan fucking with him, he goes to hit him with a bat. And right when he goes to hit him with the bat, he's like, you don't scare easy. I love that. Also in this episode, we got the backstory on Dwight. What happened with him and his wife and Negan. And especially in the beginning of the episode, Negan takes Dwight off to the side and he's like, hey, do you want to blast from the past with you-know-who? And like, you really start to see the character development. You really start to see the character breakdown of Dwight and how broken he really is and how Negan has broken him. So the episode was fantastic. Another amazing episode. I absolutely loved it. And it's going to be really interesting because next week we're getting the 87-minute episode. So it'll be really awesome to see where it goes from there. Now, let's get to Titan number 2. 2 this week goes to Dragon Ball Super. Dragon Ball Super this week was another amazing, wonderful episode. And in my opinion, I know I said this 2 weeks ago, that this was the best episode, but that was the best episode. That was the greatest episode until this week. This week, we got the Supreme God Zamasu, the fusion of both Black Goku and... Damn it, not again. We got the fusion of Black Goku and Zamasu. They used the Patara earrings, and now it's the Supreme God Zamasu, and he's got this huge epic halo. You remember last week. Now, this week, the team is going up against him. Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks, okay? And he comes out with this barrage attacks, and this was the first fight, this was one of the first episodes in a hell of a long time, where I literally felt like I was inside Dragon Ball Z again. Like, I felt like, legitimately, this was Dragon Ball Z. We got attacks from Zamasu. Like, these divine attacks that he has, like the red needles that were coming down, like all of his different attacks, and he named them too, which goes right back to Dragon Ball Z. So I think we're starting to head more into that Dragon Ball Z feel. Also in this episode, we got the Family Gallic gun. Dude, seriously. Okay, we had Trunks step up, and he's blasting him with the Gallic gun, and then Vegeta steps up, and it's like this Family Gallic gun. It was one of the coolest moments I'd ever seen in Dragon Ball, period. And then they get knocked down, and then Goku hits him with the Kamehameha, and then there's this big blast, this big wave that's coming at Trunks, and Vegeta steps up and steps in his way and completely destroys the Saiyan armor, and he's lying there on the ground. So he completely sacrifices himself for Trunks, which is huge character development-wise. 2 weeks ago, we had Vegeta's moment, and then now this week, he's sacrificing himself for Trunks. Like, that is amazing. So, all sorts of great things that happened this week on Dragon Ball Super. And next week, stay tuned. Because next week, we're going to get the big grand battle, the battle we've been waiting for. We're going to get the Supreme God Zamasu against the fusion of Vegeta and Goku. We're going to get to see Vegito again. And also, we got news recently this week that the next arc that's coming out is going to be the Universal Tournament with Zuno. So, stay tuned for that. Now, let's get to our TV this week. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I gave a 10 this week, and you know, as much as I know, that I don't give 10s very often, but this episode was extremely exceptional, and it was the best of the season. That's why it beat out all the other shows this week. Now, this week, on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Robbie Reyes and Daisy go and pick up his brother, and they bring him to the hangar, the Harrier. And they explain to and they tell him that Robbie is an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is pretty much bullshit, but he's trying to find a way to break it to his brother as to what he really is, what he's doing. Along with all this going on, Director Mace is on his way to the Harrier to arrest Ghost Rider and to arrest Daisy after last week's episode. So in this episode, we got Robbie Reyes' origin story, how he became the Ghost Rider, okay? And in this, they explain the fact that while they're in this containment field, this containment facility inside the Harrier, Robbie persists to explain to him that the night when his brother got shot and is in a wheelchair, they were out on their way to go and do this drag racing, this car racing thing, and then these 5 locos, you know, the 5 street locos, they were running up on him, and they opened fire with guns on him. And then the car's flipping out of control, and Robbie's brother explains what he's seen. He's seen this Good Samaritan show up and touch Robbie, and then he came back to life. Now, what really happened was, in the time that the car was flipping and Robbie's like flying out of the car, he asked God, he asked everybody, he asked anybody who would listen to protect his brother, to save his brother. So as he's lying there on the ground and he's dying, and he's dead, the Ghost Rider comes. We got Johnny Blaze in this episode, dude. Seriously, my mind was completely blown. So Johnny Blaze shows up on the motorcycle, right? And then walks over to Robbie as he's dead and offers him the same powers that he has. And he touches him and he passes the Ghost Rider power, which was one of the most simple, one of the most basic explanations to an origin story, but at the same time, I thought was one of the most brilliant ways to explain it. And when he touches him, he gets the Ghost Rider power. Now, fast forward to present day, okay? Director Mace shows up, right? And he's going through the Harrier, and he's trying to find them, and so the whole team is trying to distract him as much as possible. So they finally get to where he's at, and they're like, yeah, you know what? We're going to bring you up on charges. You're going to stand trial, blah, blah, blah. Well, Robbie Reyes ain't having none of this. He's like, my uncle's in trouble. I got to go save him. And he full on, flames on, turns into the Ghost Rider and breaks out of this containment field. Like, and it's like they were saying in the episode, like, there's only been a few people that have actually done this. So he breaks out, and then there's this big standoff between Ghost Rider and Director Mace. And he's just beating the crap out of Director Mace. And then Robbie's brother's like, Robbie! And like everybody's trying, even Coulson tries to pull Ghost Rider off him, and he just flings him back. And it wasn't until his brother's like, Robbie, that he starts to come back to normal. And like, it was really, really cool. Like, the flames kind of stop, they completely sizzle away, and like the skin comes back on his face. It was really, really cool. So then after this happens, they have to go to this compound where Lindsay Bauer, who is trying to power up this machine in order to bring life back to her, because she's a ghost right now. And then come to find out, what we find out at the end of the episode is the biggest reveal of the season, that it was Robbie's uncle, Eli Morrow, that orchestrated this whole thing. And then he pushes, and back in the day, he pushed her into the machine, and that's what turned her into a ghost. And now that they have enough power at this plant, he used it, and now he has the ability to manipulate matter. So what is also, and we found out that because of the fact of all this conflict between Lindsay Bauer and Eli Morrow, that they hired the hit that ended up making Robbie Reyes' brother handicapped, and that whole incident, and that was connected to his uncle. So next week's going to be really epic, because we're going to get the big fight we've been waiting for between Eli Morrow, the energy manipulating uncle, and his nephew, Robbie Reyes, the Ghost Rider. So really, really exciting. Best episode of the season. I absolutely loved it, and I am so excited to see where it goes next week. Thanks for tuning in on Titans of TV today. I'm your host, Spike Von Shadow. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.